Good afternoon. It is December 17th. It's the Board of Waterworks Trustee meeting. We do have our chairperson, Diane Moines, on the line. Diane, would you like to say hello?
Hello, I'm here.
Andrea's joined us too. First
Diane, all board members are present.
Okay. So the first thing we have is our consent agenda. Do we have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Our next meeting date is January 28th. We now have a public comment period. This is an opportunity for anyone in the group to speak to the board on any agenda item or other topic. Do we have anyone who would like to speak? Okay, if you'll approach the podium and give your name, address, and thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Abby Landhuis, 1710 High Street, Des Moines. So resident of Des Moines, obviously get my water from you guys. I'm also a member of IOCCI, and so myself and Cherie were here to comment on an agenda item. I think it's the last one, front of the court filing our amicus brief. I don't have much to say, but first I do want to thank you for being here and considering supporting us in our lawsuit. You guys are no stranger to sticking your neck out and really standing up for what's right, especially where our water is concerned. You, of course, filed your own lawsuit a few years ago, and that really paved the way and gave us the opportunity to do the same earlier this year. And so, of course, down the line, when we actually get to the agenda item, I'm just urging you to really put aside the political aspects and the legal details and really just focus on the big picture, which is, of course, our water. Us as Iowans, we have a right to clean water. That means a right to clean drinking water where we don't have to pay an arm and a leg to make sure it's treated and safe to consume. Also, we have a right to recreate our waterways safely. And those are really the big ideas surrounding this lawsuit. And so I hope and urge you to support us in an official capacity by filing this amicus.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Cherie Mortice. I'm a proud member of IOCCI, and I am our C4 board president. And I'm here also just to ask you to support this lawsuit filed by IOCCI, Food and Water Watch, and Public Trust. I want to thank you for being able public servants. I know that you put in a lot of time and effort. When I served on the City of Moines Zoning Board of Adjustment, I learned pretty quickly that it's really easy to get buried in the details of the minutia, and those weeds can really tangle up your ability to stay focused on the real issue at hand and see the big picture. The ZBA board has real authority, so every decision we made impacted people, families, individuals, businesses, communities. And I found that in almost every instance, there was a moral imperative at stake to try to do the right thing and to do no harm. And when you sit on a board or commission, I believe that everybody's trying to figure that out. However, lots of things can get in the way. You know, I don't need to tell you, the courts are a competitive field, and outcomes are recorded in terms of winners and losers. And our resolve can be hampered by those two measures. Because, for example, a woman's right to vote would have never happened if the early crusaders would have based their resolve on early outcomes. But they were important beacons of light, they forged the path forward, and they inspired and gave people hope. That bad guy on the hill to dismantle Des Moines Waterworks and fire one of the most respected men in public service didn't make it to the floor in the Iowa legislature because people stood up against the powerful forces of the Farm Bureau and the well-financed self-interest of big ag and industrial pig production. People showed up, people stood up. People are desperately looking today for hope and support from not just elected officials, but from people like you and me. And remember, the fight for justice and clean water is a moral imperative. Nobody's going to do this for us. If you back down, what message does that send Iowans who show overwhelming support for the idea that safe, clean drinking water and water to recreate in is a human right? People readily recognize that. And Des Moines ratepayers are being unfairly burdened to clean up dangerous toxins. But let me make this clear. Sometimes winning isn't everything. What is everything is showing the moral courage and resolve to take a stand and show Des Moines citizens and the thousands of people in Iowa who volunteer their time and energy to clean and restore our waterways. We need to show them that you are an ally and that this fight isn't over no matter what. Please, don't back down. Don't turn around. Support this lawsuit. As Bill Stowe would say, lean into the wind. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll move into action items. Start with A. Seth, would you like to review this water main replacement contract 2?
Absolutely. This is 2018 water main replacement contract. Contract 2 in Des Moines is now complete. There was one change order early in the project to remove some work from a budget perspective, and then some additional change orders, one of them being significant to change an open cut across East 14th Street to a bore to accommodate some traffic and some concerns from the city and the state for open cutting and having Southeast 14th Street closed, which ultimately was probably the right choice. But the work is all complete now, and staff would recommend that we accept the project.
So we're looking for a motion to accept the 2018 Des Moines Water Main Replacement Contract 2 completed by On Track Construction LLC in the amount of $1,346,401.49.
So moved.
So, second.
Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we have item 3B, which is request authorization of the CEO and general manager to execute a change order number 4 to the line residual disposal agreement with Sunnygrove.
Yes, this is, annually we have a line hauling contract to haul and properly dispose of the residuals from our lime softening process. You'll remember that a few years ago we had a lagoon that we needed to sort of emergently empty, and all that material was placed on the ground to the north of the McMullen lagoons. There's actually a picture of it on the page following this memo. We had thought for some time we might use that material to construct a third lagoon. That project hasn't come along, We're not absolutely sure that it will be allowed or the material can be used to construct that lagoon. So last year, we determined that it was time to start removing that material from the site and hauling it to a permanent destination, be that either ag lime application or mine reclamation. We entered into a change order with Synagro last year to haul roughly half of that material. They're probably not going to get everything hauled that they had hoped to haul in 2019, but this change order is another change order to haul the rest of that material. It may not get us completely through that pile that you see in the attached picture, but to take the rest of that material and put it to beneficial use, either as ag lime or mine reclamation fill. So this money is budgeted in the 2020 budget, $1.11 million to deal with those residuals. We would ask for authorization to approve that change order.
We're seeking a motion to authorize the CEO, General Manager to approve change order number 4 to the 2015-2020 lime residual disposal agreement. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, this isn't particularly on this. Did we get rid of that mountain on the east side, remember? Is that all cleared up now?
No.
Okay.
That material belongs to the contractor who hauled our material for many years and continues to haul material for other water utilities to this day. They continue to store material there.
So, but it's not our liability, or it's not our material, or?
That is certainly our perspective. Yes.
We don't know exactly what they're gonna do it, just that it's gonna be a beneficial use.
Kyle, do you believe that this material will be used for mine reclamation?
But they're telling us that the vast majority of it will go to for mine reclamation. That's the preferred area for that. They have, what they've done so far, they've done a small amount that has gone to the field, but the vast majority of it is mine reclamation.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Item 3C. Ted, would you like to walk us through this one?
Yes, this is requesting authorization for re-chaining one of our pre-sedimentation basins. We have 6 treatment basins at the fluid derived treatment plants. 2 of them are pre-sedimentation, 4 of them are softening basins. They have a significant amount of mechanical equipment within them, and that mechanical equipment, chains and drags that literally push the sludge to one end of the basin so it can be removed. Those are wear parts. They need to be replaced periodically, every 5 to 7 years. We've replaced the chains and drags in each of the basins a number of times. We're preparing to move into another cycle where we will probably see one of these rechaining projects each year for the next number of years. So this is sort of an ongoing process, replacing the wear parts in those basins. We would ask for authorization to solicit bids for that project.
We're seeking then a motion to authorize staff to solicit bids for the 2020 pre-sedimentation basin number 2 rechaining contract and establish the date of the public hearing as the date of the February 2020 board meeting and direct staff to publish notice as provided by law.
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Item 3D.
Yes, this is actually a water labeling agreement. Thorpe Water has a system that they serve on the east side of Ankeny, east of the interstate, up in Ankeny. They started serving it many years ago before there was other water service available. They have been having some water quality issues there in this area that they serve. They've come to us a couple of different times and asked if they could have connections to our system to allow them to blend with their source water and provide a higher quality of water to those customers up there. And there is a map at the end of this item that shows, if you're interested, where it is. We, as Des Moines Waterworks, do not have mains with the appropriate capacity in this immediate area. This would actually be in an area that was served primarily by the Polk, Southeast Polk Rural Water District at one time. But Ankeny has now expanded their distribution system into this area. They don't serve these customers because they're served by Thorpe Water, but they have capacity there. Our wholesale master agreements with the customers allow us to enter into an agreement whereby we could serve a customer like this development, Greenwood Acres, through the Ankeny system in a way that would not contribute to their demand in terms of purchase capacity, but would allow us to get water to these customers. Amy has worked with Thorpe and with the city of Ankeny to come to agreement whereby Thorpe would be allowed to make a connection to Ankeny's system. They would actually pay us a system development fee, pay a tap fee to Ankeny, and then they would receive water from us at with storage or the higher of our wholesale rates. Through Ankeny's system, that water would then be deducted from Ankeny's demand so it doesn't affect their purchase capacity. It's an option that allows us to get that group of customers a higher quality water. It's an opportunity for us to sell water. Ankeny has agreed. In fact, Amy shared with me that they approved the agreement last night at their council meeting. So now it's to us to approve this agreement with Thorpe and with Ankeny to provide water to Greenwood Acres through a wheeling agreement.
So we are seeking from the board a motion to approve and authorize the chairperson, the CEO, and general manager to execute the water wheeling agreement between Des Moines Waterworks, Thorpe Water Development, and the city of Ankeny. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any other discussion?
Just to be clear, the bill, if you will, to Thor comes from us to Thor.
That is correct.
It doesn't go through Ankeny.
It does not.
Okay, I just
They'll
want to
be
be
a
clear.
direct customer of
Of
ours
ours,
through the Ankeny distribution system.
I understand.
How many people, or how many housing units do you know that are?
Around number 125 connections.
And Thorpe is just a private water.
They are, and they actually have a number of systems in the metro area that, in areas that were outside of any municipality at the time they were developed. They put in wells and serve 10, 20, 100 customers.
Interesting.
Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And
Aye.
opposed? And now we're moving into a public hearing.
Yes.
So I'm going to open our public hearing.
And this is for our pre-sedimentation basin
Valve
valve replacement
replacement.
project.
Yes. Ted, have we received any type of information, comments from the public?
We have received no comments, written or oral, on this project.
Okay, with that, I'm going to close the public hearing. And is there any, it appears that we have noticed that the project reflects the appropriate coordination of existing infrastructure and that there are no suitable facilities available for rent or sharing in lieu of the project.
That is correct.
Okay. So now we're seeking a motion to approve the project's form of contract plans, specifications, and estimated cost. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second?
For this, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 And opposed? And now, General Manager, if you could review the analysis of the bids and make a recommendation to the board.
Indeed, this is a critically important project for us first. I guess I'd like to just share that. This valve structure we're going to rebuild controls all the flow of water from both river sources into our treatment process. And for a number of years, we've had challenges with those valves. They're just worn out and they've created quite a bit of trouble. Mike and his folks in engineering put together a plan to replace and sort of re-pipe, reconfigure the piping in this pre-sedimentation valve vault. We had quite a bit of interest. We had a dozen different contractors and subcontractors come and take a look at this project, and we received 3 bids on the project. The low bid being from Waldinger Corporation, $1.4 million, compared to the engineer's estimate of $1.8 million. So we feel like we got very good bids on a project that is very critical, very time sensitive, and we would ask the board's permission to award this contract to Waldinger.
So moved. Or
So we're seeking a motion
Cannot.
the pre-sedimentation basins valve replacement contract to the Waldinger Corporation in the amount of $1,417,530 and authorize chairperson, CEO, and general manager to execute the contract.
I will now move it.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Moving along to item 3F, the Rails Football Club agreement.
Yes, we actually have 3 license agreements in a row here. Last month, we talked about all of our ag land agreements. This month, we're going to talk about sports complex agreements. The first one is with the Rails Football Club. They're a fairly new tenant on this property at the corner of 30th and George Flagg. We had another tenant there for many years, but the Rails Football Club came in. I will offer that this is a little bit different than the original agreement. Originally, they thought they wanted the whole space over there, which was 14 acres. They were going to use it for a number of different activities, but they found that they didn't have use for that much land, and they were spending an awful lot of time mowing the grass. And so they came back to us and asked if they could rent the 10 acres that the previous tenant had rented and not that whole space, and we have agreed to that. So now Jessica and her folks will get to mow the grass, which they have done for many years. So this first agreement is, this is actually an agreement. The next 2 are extensions of existing agreements, but this is an agreement to allow the use of 10 acres of Waterworks property for youth sports activities at the corner of 30th and George Flagg, and we would ask authorization to execute this agreement.
So we're seeking a motion to authorize the chairperson, CEO, and general manager to execute the agreement for the use of the Waterworks property with the Rails Football Club.
So moved.
Any other discussion?
Is this, is this the club that came to a meeting earlier this year asking for space? Do you remember what I'm talking about?
That was, if I remember correctly, that was a cricket club that was looking for space, and we didn't have space. Is that correct? Jess, do you remember? Yeah.
Maybe it's
And
a
they
soccer,
started
it's a different soccer group.
The soccer
Or
group?
was it a different, I know we offered, the cricket looked at,
They looked at
put
this
this out for
space.
bid in
It
18,
seems like there was a
they were
soccer
all-
I think it was a
Maybe
soccer
it was
club.
soccer.
And I know at the time we told them that we didn't have any space. Now with,
We have 4 acres.
now we
We
have
have
4 acres. If they come back.
Well, we could look into that, reach out to them if they're interested and see if that 4 acres would be appropriate. But no, I think is the answer to your
Yes.
question.
Fair. Thank you.
I don't remember correctly exactly where it was, so we can look.
Any other discussion?
Now, can we terminate this at will, pretty much?
Pretty much, there's a very short termination clause in here, which frankly, they're all concerned about, but if we in good faith determine that we need this property for waterworks purposes, we have the ability to terminate the agreement by giving 30 days written notice. So that's very short. Yes.
This, we've done that on everything.
On all of the leases, David, that's correct. You are correct. We have the ability to terminate on very short notice if we need that property for waterworks purposes.
Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed?
Aye.
Opposed?
We'll move to the next one, Sue.
I just move this quickly. They're electronic, I'm sorry. Item 3G, the extension of the Raccoon Valley Little League agreement.
Yes, Raccoon Valley Little League has been a tenant on Waterworks property since 1992. Their complex is at the far west end of the park, outside of the park. Obviously, they have almost 30 acres that they use for youth baseball there. This is actually an extension of an existing agreement, a 3-year extension. We entered into new agreements with them 3 years ago, and now this is just an extension of that same agreement. Would include the provision that Dave described for termination is needed, the same rate, same everything else.
If I can make an observation about these agreements, they're actually license agreements, not lease agreements. The distinction being that it gives the right to use the property, but not an exclusive tenancy. So there's a certain amount of reservation for the waterworks to be on the properties.
So we're seeking a motion to authorize the CEO and general manager to execute the extension of the Raccoon Valley Little League Inc. agreement for the use of Waterworks property for a 3-year term to expire on December 31st, 2022. Do we have a motion?
So
moved.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Just a quick question, so they maintain in those baseball diamonds, we didn't do any of that work?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's the real beauty of these agreements is they're
Sure.
large tracts of land, in this case, almost 30 acres, that they do all the maintenance of. The rent is very reasonable, I will say, at $70 per acre per year. But the real benefit to us of these agreements is they do all the maintenance of all of that property.
And Ted, it might be helpful also to review, we did have an issue at one time on trash with one of the groups and how we addressed that. And
We have had, on occasion, agreements with be it trash or mowing or just general upkeep. And we have pretty successfully, Jessica and her folks, pretty successfully managed through those, met with them, reiterated. I think that the agreements are pretty clear that there's an expectation level of maintenance. For the most part, these have been very positive agreements for the one.
any other discussion?
Yeah, this
Yes.
This is Diane. I just have a quick question as to liability for activities on that property.
The tenants are required, or the licensees, I guess maybe is a more appropriate term, are required to provide insurance certificates that not only cover the activities, but also name Waterworks as an additional insured. And so we believe that we're well protected in that regard, Diane.
And then an additional point is the agreements contain indemnity provisions protecting the waterworks. And last but not least, there is a significant exemption in the Municipal Tort Claims Act when the waterworks and other municipal entities provide use of properties for recreational purposes. So there's a kind of a triple thing there.
Is that the recreational use statute,
Uh,
or is that just for private property?
It's part of the State Tort Claims Act, and it was enacted to provide cities and
Okay.
municipal utilities
Specific to,
an incentive to make recreational properties available for use by citizens. And so it covers a broad array of things. Like we allow people to kayak on Maffitt Reservoir, that's covered by that, and so is this. And parenthetically, it will also cover the city of Des Moines for things like the skate park.
Sure.
I think I'd be able to get a motion on this. I'm sorry, before our discussion, but we're seeking a motion to authorize CEO and general manager to execute the extension of the Soccer South Soccer Inc. agreement for the use of Waterworks property for a 3-year term to expire December 31st, 2022.
I think that we're getting ahead of ourselves.
We have a motion, this is, you're on the earlier item where I'm Raccoon Valley.
I'm
And you have
sorry,
a
so we
motion and
did have a
second.
motion. Okay,
We just haven't voted for it.
got it. Thank you. Michelle's giving me the sign. So all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Now we'll move on to Soccer South.
There you go.
Exactly. And same situation as the Raccoon Valley. This is the soccer complex that's along Park Avenue, just to the west of George Floyd Parkway. I'm sure you're all familiar. The location, 23 acres, that again, they maintain their expense on our property through this license agreement. Certainly have the opportunity to terminate the agreement if we have need for the property. We don't currently have need, so we're looking for authorization to extend this agreement as well.
Looking for a motion to authorize the CEO and general manager to execute the extension of the Soccer South Soccer Inc. agreement for use of Waterworks property for a 3-year term to expire December 31st, 2022.
So moved.
In a second,
Second.
any discussion on this one? So we have your map included. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, moving along, item 3I.
3I is our committee assignments for the year. The chair has made these proposed assignments for committees outside of the Waterworks and our 3 internal committees. I would offer that they are all the same as they were for this year, with the exception that on the Park Foundation board, the ex officio member or staff representative there has been changed to Mike Curran. Formerly that was Bill Stowe.
And do we need a motion on this? It appears that we do.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're seeking a motion to appoint the board members to represent Des Moines Waterworks on its behalf to the boards of the Central Iowa Regional Drinking Water Commission, Des Moines Waterworks Park Foundation, and the Greater Des Moines Botanical Garden, as well as to the committees of the Board of Trustees for the calendar year 2020.
So moved.
In a second?
Second.
Is everyone willing to serve and has no problem in staying in these roles for another year? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 And item 3J, authorization to file a friend of the court brief.
Yes, this is the request for Des Moines Waterworks to file a friend of the court brief. And I'm gonna let Rick,
Actually,
John.
I've asked Mr. Landy to make a presentation on that.
Yeah. Wanted to just give you a little,
Do you want to say?
Absolutely.
Thank you. And tell everyone who you are.
John Landy, attorney at the Dickinson Law Firm, counsel to Des Moines Waterworks. I wanted to just give you a brief overview of where that lawsuit stands, and then what the posture of the case is and what Des Moines Waterworks might say. So, as our guests here this afternoon described, there is a lawsuit pending here in Polk County against the state of Iowa, bringing a number of claims about the state of Iowa's failure to take certain actions to clean up the water in the state. The state filed a motion to dismiss the case, arguing basically 3 grounds for why the plaintiffs in this case, ICCI, should not be able to sue the state of Iowa. First, they argued that the plaintiffs have not been injured, that there's no connection between the harm that they've identified, which is the pollution in the rivers, the inability to use them for recreation, and then the lack of appealing characteristics to the water. There's no connection between the state's actions and the harm that they're complaining of. The state has also said that this is a political question that's best left to be resolved by the legislature. And they point to the Iowa Nutrient Reduction Strategy as being evidence of the state making an effort to address the pollution in our waterways and arguing that it is better to let that process run its course with the nutrient reduction strategy rather than resorting to legal action in the courts. Iowa CCI has responded to that by pointing to the Iowa Constitution and arguing that the state of Iowa has deprived Iowans of their substantive due process rights. In other words, their right to have clean water. They've identified the state as being a kind of trustee over Iowa's natural resources and argued that as trustee, the state has failed in its responsibility to safeguard those resources and therefore violated the Iowa Constitution as a result. The state's motion to dismiss was denied by the district court. So what the district court said was, I think there is a potential in this lawsuit for the plaintiffs to succeed. In order for the state to have succeeded on a motion to dismiss, the district court would have had to decide that under no state of facts could the plaintiff succeed. So if you can imagine the perfect case for a plaintiff, if it would be legally impossible for the plaintiff to succeed under those facts, then the court should dismiss the case. Otherwise, the case should be allowed to proceed. And so what the district court decided is the case should proceed. There's enough here to allow the plaintiffs to go take part in discovery and potentially even go to trial. The state then asked the Iowa Supreme Court to intervene on a number of grounds, arguing that if the Supreme Court doesn't intervene at this early stage in the case, that it's going to prejudice the state of Iowa because they'll have to go through this entire process leading up to a trial when ultimately the state may prevail. And so there's no reason to put the state through that process if ultimately they think they will prevail on the legal merits. And then ultimately what the state's argument boils down to is that there's not a legal basis for these plaintiffs to be bringing a claim at this stage. And so that is currently being briefed to the Iowa Supreme Court by the state of Iowa, since they were the one that asked for review by the Iowa Supreme Court, which the Iowa Supreme Court decided to grant. They are the first ones to make their argument to the Iowa Supreme Court. Their brief is due shortly after Christmas, I believe December 27th. And then the plaintiffs, ICCI, will have an opportunity to submit a claim or submit their brief 15 days after that. And then 7 days after that deadline is the deadline for any friends of the court who wish to support ICCI's position. So we'd be looking at the middle of January as the deadline for filing a friend of the court brief. As the yellow sheet notes, there's a couple of things that the Des Moines Waterworks can say as a friend of the court. We can point out the impact that Iowa's current water quality has on Des Moines Waterworks and provide that kind of broad overview that our guests at the beginning of the meeting talked about. The other thing that we might consider doing is pointing out to the court some of the things that the court said in our case and pointing out why the court may want to take this case seriously in light of some of the things that it said in our case. In particular, one of the new things the Iowa Supreme Court said in our case was that Des Moines Waterworks was not the right party to bring these concerns to the court. And that because we're a political subdivision, we're a governmental entity, we weren't the right party. Now we have a group of private citizens who have brought these concerns to the court. And so I think one of the things that we can point out to the court is, well, if we weren't the right party, here is a party. One of the other criticisms the court had in our case was that we only were advancing health concerns. as a basis for our complaint. We weren't alleging problems with recreation or other types of uses to the water. Well, that's an aspect of this case now, is in addition to health concerns, they've alleged impacts on recreational use of the water. And then, of course, the last comment I would make is that only 2 of the justices who heard our case are on the court now and would hear potentially this new case. So there's been a lot of turnover on the court. There was one justice who was on the court during our case, but he recused himself from deciding our case. So he actually didn't participate in the decision to hear our case. So it would be a different panel of judges that would hear the case now. So happy to answer any questions about the posture of the case, or I can take my seat.
This is Diane, I have a couple of questions.
Mm-hmm.
My first question is, you said we would be able to raise some of those, some of the concerns that the court had in our case, that we were not the right party to bring that.
Mm-hmm.
Can that not be raised through CCI's brief?
It could. It could. We could.
I mean, won't the decision in our case be available?
Yes. Yes, I think
okay.
that. Yep.
Okay. I mean, you seem to say that we needed to do that, but it would seem to me that would be available. The other question that I have, and maybe this is maybe you don't know this, but who else has been approached to provide an amicus in this case, and who else will be providing an amicus?
I don't know of anybody else. There may not be other than asking them. The amicus don't have to identify themselves until they file their motion to get permission to file their friend of the court brief. So it's possible there are others who may be on the side of the state that we won't know about until that deadline passes.
The question the reason I ask is because I think that because of our prior case, our concerns are well known through the decision, and that what we did in that case. But others, as to recreational water quality and beaches and all the rest of the water quality issues, are not of record in that case. And I just wondered who would be stepping forward to support those that are not available.
Yeah, we don't know, and I don't know that council or CCI would tell us. We could ask.
Sue, we need a motion, so I'd be willing to make a motion. Specifically, I'd like to make a motion that we have council draft the amicus brief using all of the points that Mr. Landy just outlined as possible points to be included in the brief, because I think they all have merit.
Okay, do we have a second?
A second.
Okay, discussion or questions for John?
So can you explain to me how our brief will be taken into account by the court, or how that works?
I can't speak for the court. I can tell you that we will submit an application to have our brief considered, and in that we have to identify the reasons why the court might want to listen to us, and those reasons I think we would lay out similar to what I just described. Amicus, I think there are a lot of different viewpoints on what benefits they provide, but what they can provide is information the court might not get through the normal process of a lawsuit being brought up, and then the identity of who's saying those things can also be influential and matter to the court. So that, I think, is how the amicus plays a role in the decision.
I'd just like to say that I think this is important that we do this for a number of reasons. I mean, yes, it is, I think it has and most importantly, it has there's legal merit for us to do this, that it's in the best interest of our ratepayers to stand up and tell the court about these impacts that our ratepayers face, increasingly polluted water, which is cost and also dangers to health, what have you. And that is important. There's also, I think we need to continue to argue and show the court that the state's nutrient reduction strategy, which has been detailed in 1,000 different ways to be ineffective in the fact that it will take lifetimes of people before there's any impact, if any, on our waters. For the state to argue that we need to let some time pass and allow the nutrient reduction strategy to work, we don't have that time. And so all of those are arguments Mr. Landy, and I won't repeat them, outlined that we should include in our brief, are important for the court. They're also important from a political context, that people begin and continue to fight this fight. We fought this fight, and it was a lonely battle for a long time, and there were people that stood with us, and we owe it to our ratepayers to stand with people who continue to fight this fight, because the only way we're going to make a difference is if we band together to do that in these tenuous political times, let's call it.
Diane, and I just want to speak. I don't think there's anybody that can dispute everybody's concern about clean water. I want to raise two issues that I have. One is the one I just said. Our concerns are well documented and certainly can be pointed to by CCI in this case. My second concern goes to something that Graham just said, which was it was very lonely before. I was not here, but I have heard, I saw it from the outside what was the way that the waterworks was portrayed. My concern goes to us continuing to do this by ourselves. I'm certainly hopeful that if we do this, that there will be a number of other amici that will come forward and support this, and that we would not once again, I don't know who's been approached, I don't know if the other water work have been approached to do this, but I would certainly be concerned if we were once again the only ones standing up to do this, because I agree with the speakers in the comment period that this is an important thing, which means the only way that the court will pay attention to it is if increasingly numbers of citizens come forward and say we're concerned about our water quality, which means more than us who clean it up and are well known to have this concern say we're concerned also. I have a concern about the impact on regionalization that we've been working on for the last couple of years, and whether or not us continuing to strike out alone. And again, I'm hoping that if we do this, that we wouldn't be alone in this concern and looking like that, and that there have been attempts not only in the metro area to have people and organizations come forward, but statewide. So that gives me hesitancy in going forward with this. Like I said, I think our concerns with water quality and the impact are well documented and available to these parties.
My biggest concern on doing anything on this is the regionalization. When we entered the lawsuit before, we had a lot of criticism from our regional customers about not visiting with them first. So it sounds to me like we're under a time frame that we need to do something fairly quickly, definitely by the middle of January. I wouldn't want us to take this action without talking to other entities that also have an interest in clean water and making sure that, that we have better water than we've had coming down the streams. But also the timing of this with the legislature starting, I think is very risky to us as an organization. So I think that the speakers spoke earlier, I wish them well, but I cannot support this at this time because of regionalization as well as what I think could happen with the legislature if we take this action again. But that's just my opinion because of what I've heard before from other regional leaders.
The rush to, the compacted timeframe is an interesting concern. When were we contacted by the parties to file this amicus brief?
Got to ask Rick if he recalls.
It was mid-November, I believe.
And it's coming to us now, so it's been,
Time.
yeah, so it's been 6 weeks before it came to our board. Correct?
It would have been after the last regular board meeting, so I'm not sure it's 6 weeks. It might be a little less time than that. I could get an exact date by looking at some records.
I'm not sure, Sue, that I agree with the assessment that the problem with some of our regional customers that we did not talk to them first before we filed a lawsuit before. I think that they opposed our lawsuit, which brings me back to the beginning, and that's where the way I evaluate this is what's in the best interest of our ratepayer. The best interest of our ratepayers is that we have a permanent clean source of water, that we protect the natural resource of water going forward. And for me, doing what's right means standing up for our ratepayers on that most important issue. And if it again irritates certain groups, certain participants in our community for a political reason, I can't remain silent, even if that upsets a regional conversation. I think the first thing to me is what's the right thing to do to protect the natural resource of water, and this type of a lawsuit is our only mechanism to get there, because we have a legislature and a governor who are unwilling to act on this. There was just a eloquent piece written in the Cedar Rapids Gazette this week about how another year has passed without our governor or legislature taking any significant action to protect our waterways. And so as people and as those who represent ratepayers, unfortunately, our only recourse is in the courts, and so that's where we have to go. And one last thing I'll say to Diane's point, I don't disagree with her that there's a lot of legal work that's been done out there with regards to our case. It's out there and accessible. The reason we file the amicus brief, though, is to remind the court not only that, look this way, look at our court, you told us that we were the wrong party, therefore maybe this is the right party, and to help point that direction. But it is important, to Diane's point, that we stand up and remind the court, not only did we fight the fight once, but we're still in the fight and we're still interested in that. And so it is important that we join this, and hopefully others do too, because at some point there'll be some legal case that is victorious for our ratepayers.
Hey, Sue, would there be, probably better than any board member, the players or whatever you want to call
Well, everyone does. I mean,
Oh.
Graham's very involved in it. and Diane,
Is there any way we can
Amy.
ask if people would like to join us, since we're doing regionalization and we're continuing with this, we want to do this, and want to know if they'd join us?
Because to Dave, what I think Dave's getting at, and kind of a comment that Diane made, that our concerns, as I think Diane said exactly, our concerns and history of this is well known. So our regional partners are very aware of what our position is regarding water quality, and it's not a secret to them. So I'm not sure if, and I'm open to being told I'm wrong, that kind of filing something in support of this lawsuit that just reemphasizes what people already know is harmful to our regional partners. And perhaps, since they didn't appreciate the way that we went at it the first time, is there an opportunity, I know it's very short timing, to explain to them or to have a conversation with them of how we're gonna go about it, or how we may go about it
Yeah,
this
not
time.
just have it dropped on them,
Yeah,
to welcome them.
and maybe that narrows or changes the scope of what we would write in an amicus brief. Maybe we don't go deep into laying out a new argument, but just restating what we had already said in the past.
Right, I don't think anything that you said there was laying out a new argument.
No, I think we would be bringing the court's attention to some of the parts of the decision that was issued before, that we think this new case sort of fits like a puzzle with, that addresses some of the concerns the court had in the prior case. I also want to make one correction. I think I said before that there are only 2 justices who decided our case that would be involved in this one. I think it's actually 3. It's still a minority of the total 7 seats on the court, but I forgot. I didn't count one.
In your conversations with regionalizations, has this been a specific topic that's been brought up?
Yes, early on especially.
In that they don't appreciate the lawsuit we brought, or that they don't appreciate the fighting for water quality?
Oh, it's not the fighting for water quality at all.
Sure.
I mean, especially when you have other groups that are very supportive of all the recreation.
Sure,
that's going
yeah,
on.
especially with all this not downtown, but this water trails
Right.
project going on.
I think it's clear that we are on the same side of this question as our friends from RCCI. Is there a way to simply provide a statement of the facts? Facts are clear. The quality of the water is a challenge to us, and why and how much, without putting off the regional partners. And we could even communicate that to them in advance, that we've been asked to do this, we're gonna share a statement of the facts. The facts are the facts. Is that possible?
Well, yes, what we say in the brief is completely within our control. There's no limitation on the argument that's being made. The rules do require us to state our interest in the case and why we are speaking.
It's very factual.
Yeah. Beyond that, there's a high degree of freedom.
I mean, would we be comfortable not going after the state in this?
No, I don't, no. The way that John outlined the possible, their arguments, what are they, elements of the brief make sense to me. It's a restatement of why we were in this fight. It's a statement of why this impacts our ratepayers. It highlights the point that we were told by the court that we were the wrong filer of a complaint, and therefore maybe this party is. I mean, all of those points make sense to me, and as I say, if these points are all valid and they are what we stand for, I don't want to water them down just so that somebody in West Des Moines gets angry. I mean, that just doesn't, that's not that's not the way we should fight this fight. It doesn't help our ratepayers.
When the legislative session opens and the leadership says, so how are we coming on the whole regionalization effort? I do not want the first message to be delivered to be, well, you know, Des Moines Waterworks is at it again, they're part of this lawsuit. And that could easily be twisted and stated. And then they could be coming back after us again. And I just think we're doing so many things great on regionalization, which is a top priority. And I don't know that our engagement of this friend of the court brief is going to push the decision over one way or another. And I almost wonder if we don't harm the case because, you know, of our previous case. So, and if you look at the changes in the court, it doesn't help us. I mean, John, you gotta admit, I mean, how have they been appointed and what's gonna be the likelihood of them overturning the state direction? I mean, you gotta be honest with this group on that.
Yeah, I think the case faces challenges with the current makeup of the Iowa Supreme Court, although I will also add that many of the judges are new to, or at least one of the judges I don't think have been a member of the appellate court before. I don't know that they've ruled on a case like this before. So I hesitate to say, you know, what I think a judge is going to do until they've had a case presented to them. But I think it would be accurate to say, based on the claims that Iowa CCI is making in this case, that they do face an uphill challenge in this lawsuit. I agree with that.
That is no reason, or that is an invalid reason, in my opinion, to not file a brief because you think the case is going to lose.
No, and please, I'm not saying that, but he was saying, we've got these new judges that are coming in as part of the Supreme Court. I'm saying, let's talk about how they were appointed, who appointed them. I mean, let's be real on this.
They were appointed by the current governor, yes.
And another one will be soon.
Yes, yes.
And back to the regionalization thing, again, I think we have worked in good faith over the last couple of years to find common ground on regionalization. If for some political reason, somebody wants to go to the legislature and say Des Moines is bad because they're standing up for clean water for their ratepayers and they're at it again, well, to hell with them. I mean, we can't continue to back down because we think the court is stacked against us or the legislature is stacked against us, because guess what, folks? They are stacked against us. And at some point, we've got to fight back, and at some point, we've got to make our case known. We can't put our tail between our legs and say, well, we'll just wait till there's a Democrat in office and then we'll stand up and do what's right.
Yeah, regionalization, oops, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay, as I say, I don't think the regionalization concerns me as much, just because we have been vocal about this and people know where we stand, and it's not like we are putting our name on the lawsuit. We're not joining the lawsuit in the stance, or in the same way that
That's an excellent point.
Food and Water Watch have joined the lawsuit. The legislature makes me a little bit more nervous, just because of their attempts at dismantle us before and us shooting up a flag. Again, for them to notice us, and that's why, and not being a lawyer, and despite being married to one, I still don't know much about how that all works. How much really how much will this amicus brief be in the limelight? I mean, are we really, like, how, yeah, unless it becomes a Des Moines Register article. It's not like we're signing on to be a partner in this lawsuit. And I'm just kind of rambling out loud to myself.
And yet, if you were presenting to a farmer in southern Iowa that didn't even need this much of an issue to try to dismantle us before, it becomes, I think, a pretty easy case to say they're at it again. Look, they've already filed this and they're, we need to take them down. I do not see the additional advantages to us. CCI is going ahead with it, and that's great. And I hope they do reach out to West Des Moines Water Board and Urbandale Water Board and anyone else, but I just cannot support this with.
You know, and I think when I look at it, I have the same concerns as Sue, and I am being a lawyer, I think, and having filed these before. I think that everything that we would say, because of the lawsuit, will be available to CCI to make their case on why they should go forward. So my concern goes to, and I don't know how we do this, again, as I said, if it is CCI and Des Moines Water Works, I have a lot of concerns there being the only friend of the court. If it's CCI and there are 25 different groups that are concerned about water quality and willing to come forward, I feel more comfortable there. But I think they have everything available that we would say in our brief, and I see no reason to take the kind of risks and at this time with the other things that we have going on to say something that they can already say, already have a record, already have a case that they can point to that will they'll be able to use in their case. So I think we already have contributed tremendously. And like I said, I wish them well. I certainly hope that they can make some traction here. But those are my concerns.
I'm very torn because I don't know how comfortable I feel with looking like we put our tail between our legs and said that we don't want to publicly be out there anymore. But I agree that it's we're in the middle of a lot of sensitive negotiations and starting the legislative session that we could be opening up another box. But again, I'm just rambling on live for a second. Thank you all for listening to me.
I think the best way to negotiate with any party is to put all your cards on the table and to say, here's who we are, here's how we act, this is what we believe in. And then go forward and focus on, in this case, the merits of working together on regionalization and hammering that out. I think it would be a mistake for us to, if this is what we believe, that we believe this is in the best interest of our ratepayers, which in this case I do, that stating that states the obvious and puts it out there. If they want to attack us on this, have at it, boys.
Yeah, and I think our cards are on the table through the suit that we brought and the decision to be able to use that and build on that to make this case. So I think our cards are on the table.
I'm not one to just hide in the shadows, I'm afraid. I think we need to stand up for what we stand up and not take the expedient way out.
Will we be able to read anything that you prepare before it gets filed?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I guess I'll say, I know we have a couple people from CCI who are there, and I hope they've heard this discussion, and I certainly hope that they are soliciting a number of friends who have not brought lawsuits before and do not have the kind of stated record that we have come forward and talk about their impact, the impact on water quality and how it impacts their use of the water.
Well, and Dave just asked me if we wanted to open this up to public comment, which might get at your question. Is there anything else you'd like to say on this specific agenda item?
You know, if Iowa CCI looked at sort of the scoreboard, and then turned around and walked away from an issue that was directly impacting people's lives, we would not have the membership that we have, nor would we wouldn't be the strongest grassroots organization in the state. I mean, the fact of the matter is that again, you are getting caught up in a lot of the details and minutiae that a lot of it is political. A lot of what you're concerned about really is out of your hands. What you can decide is to embrace the moral imperative here, and that's to put people first. Put your ratepayers first. What are we supposed to tell our membership that are fighting these battles in their own counties? Well, sorry, Polk County just kind of put their tail between their legs, and Des Moines Waterworks wouldn't stand up. There's going to be a lot of disappointment, not just in Polk County, but our membership, we have members in every single county throughout this state. They're going to be looking at this, and they're looking for heroes. They're looking for strong leadership.
Can you tell us what other organizations are going to step forward and file the
The point of the matter is that you need to stand up and do the right thing. And the right thing is to represent everyday people. And that isn't what's happening right now. What you're doing is you're getting caught up in political issues and you're trying to predict the future.
And Diane, I'll just add, the person who's speaking is not the lawyer for the case, so I don't think she would have any idea who else they're asking.
I'm sorry, I forgot to introduce myself.
Yeah.
Cherie Mortice, President of Iowa CCI C4 Board. But, you know, people need to see that sometimes when government doesn't work very well for us, our boards and commissions do. Thank you.
There are a number of organizations throughout the state who are concerned about water quality. My question went to how many other, are we going to be the only one?
We don't know that. The attorneys that are handling this case aren't here, so there's no one here to answer that question.
But if you're in an organization, this person certainly knows that we've been contacted, knows to show up and make a speak before our board. Aren't there other boards considering this? She just said they have membership in every single county. And as we know, water quality in this state, there are people in every single county who are concerned about it. So I'm just wondering
I'll tell you what ours,
without
our experience.
if I don't do it, I'm somehow abandoning my moral imperative.
What we do know, not just through our membership, but from the counties and county boards of supervisors that we work with, and local populations, some of who are members, some of who are not, is that people in Iowa overwhelmingly believe that having our waterways protected is a right. They believe that it is a right to have clean water. They believe it is a right to be able to recreate. Now, we just got the Impaired Waterways report that was 18 months late. And the fact of the matter is water quality isn't getting better, it's getting worse. We've been at 750 polluted water bodies. We are now at 767. And that number probably doesn't really reflect the total number because the Iowa DNR only tests certain sections of all of our waterways. God only knows what the number really is. I would suggest that it's much higher than 767 polluted water bodies. And so, you're either going to be on the side of the interests and the well-being of our families and our communities and our neighborhoods in Polk County, or you're not. And that is a bad look for you as a board, as a governing board that's making important decisions. These are value judgments. And what I'm asking you to do is to put aside all of this other stuff because the moral imperative is more important.
You know, it's interesting, it makes me think, Diane, you were talking about the fact that, you know, our views on this are well noted and, you know, are available to the courts. I almost think there's an opposite, you know, the opposite part of that argument, or the argument that I would make is, should we choose not to file this brief, our silence is what will speak to the court. Because suddenly, the one entity that filed a lawsuit in this state to fight on this issue couldn't take the time to write a friend of the court brief. That sends the signals that we no longer stand for those things. And that's what I think that the CCI and Food and Water Watch are asking us to do, is to remind the court, this is why we fought this battle, and this is where we lost, and this is what the court told us. And so I really think that, as I say, I don't disagree with you that there's a record out there of all of these things that the court could look to. But should we choose not to do this, our silence sends a signal that we no longer stand for these things and they're no longer important to our ratepayers. And I can't stand to do that.
Graham, I think we're gonna go around and around and around on this. I will tell you that I don't appreciate telling me I'm either for or against clean water. I think that is a very narrow way to look at this. And I will say to an organization, I will agree that the polls all say people are concerned about clean water. The only way we're going to get this done is if people stand up and say, I'm concerned about clean water. If you bring a suit and you're unable to bring along a lot of people in their organizations and through their daily life, places where they engage, to come forward in that suit and say, as a friend of the court, our organization is very concerned, and you want just us to do that, or you haven't been out there and done the legwork to get others out there to do it, I have concerns about that. Because I think that if you are going to win, you have to do it at the people level. So that's where my concerns. And if I sound angry, I am angry because I've worked my whole life on environmental issues. And for someone to tell me that I am abandoning a moral imperative by having these kinds of questions about it, I'm unhappy about that.
If I implied that, I apologize, but I will say that, I think that looking back at the Des Moines Waterworks history with this, I'm very sensitive to how hard it is to get those people and those organizations that you talk about to stand with you on these things.
We were pretty much alone.
We were, right, Dave, we were very much alone. And so I am very sensitive to that it's not that easy to get people to stick their neck out for the very reason that we're having this debate today. There are, you and Sue are arguing, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, that one of the main reasons we shouldn't do this is because it might upset our regional discussions. I agree, that's a point to talk about, but imagine all of the political pressures that every other organization faces and says, I can't stand up to do this because the Republican legislature may do this to me or may not fund this project to me. And at the end of the day, the whole reason I say that is it's hard to get people to stand up and do this. And yes, there may be people who point a finger at us and say things that we don't like because we did this, but at the end of the day, is it the right thing to do? In my opinion, yes.
I just want to say one quick thing, because I made a comment about how I wasn't concerned about the regional partners as much as I was the legislature. And I just want to give a little bit more information there in the sense that we need to make decisions regarding our ratepayers and how to protect them and move forward, and how that fight for clean water. And we have repeatedly said that we fear what our regional partners are going to do. And I fear it is if the legislature does dismantle us, then who is protecting our ratepayers? Because it certainly sounds like it may not be our regional partners. I still am turning the wheels in here, but I just want to provide that piece, because just because I do fear what the future may be for Des Moines Waterworks based on what our decision is. It's not because I'm afraid that they will, slap us on our hands or fight back. It's who will be protecting us or our ratepayers if we're not here to protect our ratepayers.
But if you extrapolate what you said, if we were regional, what you're saying is
Sure.
we couldn't do this. So
That's something to think about.
I don't know that, I don't agree with that. I think that
Well, that
if
was
we
the,
become regional, that others will realize what we're cleaning up in the water.
I do agree with that too. I think if we were regional and people in the rest of the region had to deal with what we've had to deal with cleaning up the water, they may change their mind on when to pick up the sword and fight.
Did you have anything you wanted to say? We have one more comment, I think, here, the public
Yeah,
comment.
thank you. This is Abby Landhuis with IOCCI again. And I just want to reiterate what Cherie has been saying, and it saddens me to hear you say that if Des Moines Waterworks were the only group to stand up, then that would be a big reason why you wouldn't vote for this.
That's not what she said.
Well, she's concerned that
You're not asking a lot of others to do it.
right, that we're only asking you to do this. I mean, you just have to trust us that we're doing our job here. I'm not at liberty to say anything legal. But I mean, we're not afraid to stand up against the big guys. The General Assembly is very stacked, and you have some political aspects to think of, but I'm urging you to think of the big picture here. You've already done all the work. You would just be reiterating what the work you've already been doing for years and years, what you filed in your lawsuit, what you stand up every day to protect the natural resource and to provide clean and affordable water to your ratepayers. And emphasis on clean, that's not cheap at all. And so we're asking you to take a stand and to support this lawsuit. Try to cut through all the political aspects and legal aspects. I know that's very hard to do, but if you could just join us and just kind of stand up for the big picture. I'm not saying any of you don't care about water quality. Obviously you do. That's why you're here, that's why you're on this board. But I mean, you already did this. It would just be adding your support in a brief.
Thank you. I have another concern, and it's for our employees. I remember when we filed the lawsuit before, and when the legislature took the action that they did, there was a lot of stress and concern among our employees, a lot of anxiety. Are we losing our jobs? What will happen if we become part of the city of Des Moines? And I just think this is a fight that we do not need to be into at this time when there are other things that we are trying to do. Going into the legislative session again, there will be questions asked about how are we doing on regionalization. And I do not want, depending on whoever's delivering the message, for the first thing for them to say is, well, Des Moines Waterworks is again part of a lawsuit against the state of Iowa and clean water. Because there are people there that feel that they didn't get what they wanted by dismantling Des Moines Waterworks. And I think they would, again, come after us. And I don't want to do that to our employees, our ratepayers. And I wish CCI all the luck in the world, but I'm strongly opposed to this. Anyone else wish to say anything? So we have a motion on the table to support. Let me restate it. Yeah.
Actually, restate it and then so I can remember what it is.
Sure, my motion was in effect to file an amicus brief using the points that Mr. Landy outlined, all of the points that Mr. Landy outlined as supporting elements of the brief. Sounds about right.
Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Aye.
No, I mean, aye.
Okay,
Do you
so
want to take voice vote?
Is it possible though that we would be able, like I said, to read that and then make comments on that? And
Yes.
I'm unclear on what votes were cast. So you have the votes?
Graham,
as you have them?
Andrea, and Dave voted in favor of it, and Sue and Diane voted opposed.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, moving along, the next thing we have is just report out by our various committees, planning committee.
Yes. We had 2 items on the planning committee. The first item was the ground facility reclamation update. Basically, it was we're getting some land from the city, and we are taking down the barn, the wooden barn, and some discussions of what to do with the existing metal building. And then there were some discussions on what we would build on the land. And I think probably we all agreed that wooden barn is going to the position. And there'll be some real good thoughts on the bats and a couple other things, but they were all real constructive. The metal building, I think, after going to the last park meeting and stuff, I think it's kind of up on the air if we're gonna need, might be done with that area.
Some options there.
Some options to look at. And then on the existing land, at least my comments were, I'd like to see something that maybe we go through some real design go through of what is appropriate there with uses near it. You know, maybe the car repair shop is gonna move we had some ideas of a real sturdy 200-year concrete building, but I'm not so sure that that's the way we'd want to do it. We might even want to do something that's less expensive and more aesthetic to go with the winery and stuff. You know, we just opened up discussions on how to relocate there. Is that a fair way to say it, Ted?
It is, Dave. Very early stages of design development on the new building.
And I think we'd like to look at design on it so that whatever we do goes with the park plan, whatever we do over there goes with the neighbors and with the park in general, the plan. Andre, do you have any other comment on that?
no, I think that pretty much summarizes it.
Okay. And then the second thing would, I wish it'd go away, is the backflow. And I guess maybe the only thing that really is new or something to update was the issue of there are like 600 people that haven't done their tests.
Correct.
And the staff said they didn't want to cut them off, and we had some discussions on those. And I guess my feeling from talking to people that have received, I don't know if they've received them or not, but they have backflows. And I don't think, well, this is just my opinion, I don't think it's been handled properly, the way it's been implemented, and the way people have been educated. And I think in some cases, I've probably read 1,000 horrible, I should be blind, reading those EPA reports and stuff, or whatever reports they were. I think our program is I'm not an expert, but it's not the way it should have been handled. I think a lot of people are not doing it because they don't think it's necessary and they think it's stupid.
Yeah, it's a state requirement that's
Yeah.
handed down to the city,
Okay.
which we have to administer. I
Okay.
think we talked about this, we had a presentation from John. So I'm gonna say on this one, we cannot continue to have the discussion on an issue that We've had plenty of time for the
What
board
we were
to
talking about
review.
is, should we shut them off or charge them
Well,
$180,000?
and I'm gonna say that's an operational issue,
Okay.
and Diane, unless you feel differently, I think we have been able to ask the questions that we wanted of staff. We've had a legal presentation. If this is something that's a priority that we need to try to change the law, that's one thing, but we are following up on requirements that we have to do.
Okay, I was just gonna update you. At the end of the
Yeah, so-
meeting, I said, don't tell them you're gonna shut them off, don't lie to them.
Yeah, well,
Just send them the bill.
and I have all the confidence that our staff will make sure that they handle customer service. So, sorry, but we've beaten that
Okay.
one till.
So long.
So Finance and Audit Committee?
Finance and Audit Committee, I thought we had a meeting for a minute, but actually it was the
We
board
switched
meeting.
it
We did
to-
not have a Finance and Audit meeting, and Dave, I missed your call earlier in the day. The legal review process will be at the next Finance and Audit in January, because we didn't have one in December.
Customer Relations Committee, I think we had canceled that, but we ended up having the CEO search meeting at the same time,
That's right.
if I'm correct.
We moved
Yeah.
everything around.
We did. Billstone Memorial Committee, any kind of an
And
update
I'll
on
let
that?
David and Andrea jump in if they need to. We don't have much new to report, although we did have a meeting a week or so ago. I'm very hopeful about this concept of, of education-focused element of the park that also, continues to, or would also help fund some aspects of the Water Academy and maybe expand it in schools and other things. And we're putting together some lists of potential donors, and it's all good news right now. Just stay tuned. It's gonna take some time to put the details together.
Terrific.
And the Botanical Garden also doesn't have much to report, although things continue to go well. And as I mentioned at our last meeting, and Ted and I have talked about it, and I've also talked to Stephanie Judela at the park, sometime in the first part of 2020, we're gonna get together and start planning of what their needs are in the future, so that we can have a discussion at board about what our desires of how we continue that cooperation. We're not at an end of our contract, but it makes sense to start having that conversation now. And everybody agrees.
Des Moines Waterworks Park Foundation, Fluor is open, that's the big news, I think. Old letters. Anything else on the Park Foundation that we want to update the board about?
I don't think so. They're going through some leadership transitions. I think one of the other things to note is how this Billstone Memorial is working in cooperation with the Park Foundation, and will fit nicely into what their phase 2 in moving forward will be.
That really is helpful. I mean, the way that the foundation is working on the stove thing, it's the way we should work together. And I'll just add in, if you haven't walked over and looked at the sculpture yet, it's really cool. And, you gotta stand there and listen to it, but I think it's a real asset.
And you can see it from Fluor, and it's
It
beautiful.
is beautiful in the evening. I think it's spectacular.
Laura, government outreach update, do you have anything you'd like to share with us? Thank you.
Just to preview what I have been hearing, and Sue probably has been hearing the same things in the last couple weeks. A lot of different metro groups and businesses have been having legislative previews for the upcoming 2020 session. And what we're hearing is there's could be different priorities for the two separate chambers. One for the House, that they would like to get out as early as possible and go home and raise funds and campaign as quickly as possible. And on the flip side, or the reverse side, the Senate would like to stay there as long as need be, because they've worked really hard to have the 3 Republican trifecta of all the areas of the government. So this could be the last hurrah if by chance the House or the Senate flips in 2020. So those are the 2 things we're hearing on the different priorities of those chambers. And we'll also hear in the next coming weeks, and if not in the upcoming weeks, we'll hear in her state address if Governor Reynolds is supportive of the IWIL, or the Natural Resource Trust Fund, There has been lots and lots of chatter. We say that every year during the interim, but this has been the most chatter we've ever heard for a session. And Andrea has probably heard of all this chatter as well. She has hired a new tax policy advisor, and they're looking at something that would raise the full cent sales tax. But however, it would be revenue neutral. And I am not a tax policy expert, so don't ask me what any of that means. But just know that Iowa will be up for debate, and where the formula of the Iowa will go, it will still be a point of contention. And then also where that 5/8 of the rest of the cent will also be probably more of a fight because there's mental health, there's schools, there's property tax relief, earned income tax relief, corporate tax relief. They all want a piece of that 5/8 cents. So more to come on that.
Thank you, Laura.
Yep.
Okay, CEO and General Manager comments.
Very quickly, a couple of bits of good news. Park Foundation wise, Michael and I met with them yesterday for our quarterly meeting, and they shared that they had a very good December. They have received almost $1 million in additional pledges in the month of December alone. That's very positive and is really helpful for them in a cash flow situation. Jenny has shared with me recently that this is a very positive year for main breaks. I don't like to jinx it, but I don't believe in jinxing. So 213 main breaks today compared to a budget of 309. We should easily be well under that 309. That's very positive. We'll hope that that continues. Well, with it being 45 next week, I think we're in good shape. The only other thing, and I'm not a film critic, so forgive me if this movie is no good, but I'm going to recommend a movie. There's a movie showing right now called Dark Waters. It's a 2019 film. It's showing at the Fleur. I'm planning to go tomorrow myself, actually, but it's about PFAS contamination of a water supply that was very, very impactful on the community and some of how water pollution can impact.
Did you see the NBC News piece they did this week on PFAS?
I did not.
It was interesting, and I thought it was pretty well done. They focused on a Navy base in Pennsylvania where they did a lot of firefighting back in the day, and I thought they explained it pretty well, so you might find that
too. The Dark Waters is showing at the Fleur, so if anyone's interested.
Ted, I do have a question for you. Graham and I were in a meeting earlier, and he mentioned he would be out of town on the 7th for the customer relations meeting. Do we have anything that we need to discuss, or do we want to cancel that meeting? I think we're having individual meetings.
Yes, I would say that we could likely cancel that. We will be meeting with the region, we hope, later in the month.
Right.
So if we want to take that off of the agenda.
Move it to whatever date we come up with for the regional meeting.
That'd be fine with me. As I say, I'm sorry, but I hate to admit it, I'm gonna go to Florida that day.
Sounds like a good thing.
And so we would get an update on all the different conversations that have been happening and where we stand with different things at this meeting to be scheduled.
Yes, and invite some of the regional customers just to, again, review the discussions that have happened with each of the regional customers, just to keep them all informed was the thought of what we would do.
And it might be helpful for us to hear from them a little bit too.
Sure.
So that would be late January, early February.
We're hoping
We're
maybe
looking
that
the last week of January. Probably not Monday or Tuesday for the city council and our board.
Right.
Seems like a long time away, but it'll be here quickly.
I know, with all the holidays between now and then will be upon us.
Okay, anything else? Okay, with that, I'll take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Merry Christmas, everyone.